It was a phrase that came to me in 2013 on my birthday, walking with my wife. We were living in India at the time. And she asked some question like, if you could do anything, what would you do? Or something like that. I don't remember. And that just phrase just popped out of my mouth, fully formed. And I was like, what the hell is that? And then I started crying for 20 minutes. And I was just, whoa, okay. So it's like just awestruck by the vision of that.
We're all about turning a crappy situation into something positive.
$250,000 of credit card debt.
I still remember the day when no one turned up.
Throw it in the garbage and start from scratch.
I could give myself a chance, so I started something.
I mean, I think that counts as from poop to gold.
Our sponsor for this episode is our 14-day video script challenge.
Yes, we are sponsoring our own show.
Yes, we are.
Welcome back to From Poop to Gold. I'm Benton Crane, your co-host and the CEO of Harmon Brothers. Today, I have with me Calvin Correli. Welcome to the show, Calvin.
Thank you so much, Benton. I really appreciate to being here.
So Calvin is the founder of a multi-million-dollar company called Simplero, and I'm going to let him tell us about that. But first, I find this really fascinating. So Calvin is the self-proclaimed future special advisor to the President of the United States on conscious nation building.
Yeah, it was a phrase that came to me in 2013 on my birthday, walking with my wife. We were living in India at the time. And she asked some question like, if you could do anything, what would you do? Or something like that. I don't remember. And that just phrase just popped out of my mouth, fully formed. And I was like, what the hell is that? And then I started crying for 20 minutes. And I was just, whoa, okay. So it's like just awestruck by the vision of that. And so it's stayed with me since. And then a couple of years ago, I got way more interested in politics and how it actually works and started studying more. And so I have a project that I call Notable Nation, which is sort of a long-term project to correct in politics, if you will. So what I realized is that after hanging out with people that are both on the left and the right, is that we all want the same things, right? We want people to be happy and safe and prosperous, and we want Earth to sustain human life for thousands and thousands of years. But we can't agree on anything because we keep fighting over the details instead of the big picture. And I think a big part of it is just helping people be more mature, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. And if we can do that, then all the other problems take care of themselves very easily.
But your legit goal, you're legit working toward becoming a special advisor to the President of the United States.
Yeah.
Which I think that is the fact that it's self-proclaimed and you're working towards it. I find that extremely fascinating. How are you going to get there?
How am I going to get there? Relationships. That's the simple answer, right? Relationships and having a clear profile and agenda that people can buy into.
Okay, Calvin, this is the Poop to Gold podcast, and we're going to dive into your Poop to Gold journey. But before we do, take just a minute and tell our listeners what is Simplero, and also tell our listeners about the coaching that you do to help transform lives.
Yeah, I'd love to. Simplero is a integrated all-in-one software platform for coaches, authors, speakers, people selling information, courses, memberships. So basically anything that doesn't need to be shipped via UPS or USPS or something like that. And I created it 11 years ago now because I had been struggling as an entrepreneur, and I went through a personal development. I had a coach and got a coach education, and I worked with a spiritual teacher, and the tools and techniques that I learned there, I was like, every other entrepreneur needs to know this stuff. And so I was an engineer and a not very great entrepreneur. And I was like, this needs to get out there. And so that's when I discovered online courses, and I ended up building the software for it because I didn't like what was out there. I figured I could do better. And that became Simplero. Still around today and still doing great.
Is Simplero an alternative to the Kajabis of the world, the ClickFunnels, that sort of thing?
Yeah.
And what's Simplero's unique differentiator that differentiates you from a Kajabi or a ClickFunnels?
Right. The unique thing is that it's integrated and it's more flexible than a Kajabi, say. Like a ClickFunnels doesn't really have the membership site piece. It doesn't really have your website. There's a lot of pieces that they don't do. And then it has your landing pages, but not the site, as far as I know anyway. And then on the other end, we know that if you do this kind of business, you have anything from a free thing to lead magnet to like a $7 tripwire kind of thing to something high end expensive at the top end, right? So we try to be flexible and robust for that type of business model. We don't lock you into a specific format.
Awesome.
And can I also add two things, which is customer service and concierge, which is something that like I am obsessed with service, with giving great service. And so that's something that we invest very, very heavily in. And as part of that, we have this white glove concierge service, which I don't think others in the field does. And that's really phenomenal, where we can do this stuff for you and really help you hands on.
And what about the coaching that you do?
Right. So my journey, and it's kind of getting into the poop to gold story, actually, because my journey has been one of growing up. Like I would say starting point for real in 2003. So like 17 years now of growing up in every possible way. And, from a, not having, no good business, terrible relationships, terrible health, not knowing my purpose or my passions or what I really wanted to do and just being stuck in life to having figured all these areas out. And so it is what I've come to realize is that really the job of a leader is to grow up. Like what we need from leaders are that for them to be fully grown up, because then you can step into that leadership and you can lead other people on their journeys, whether that's in business or in public service or whatever kind of, like in your community, in your family, in your home. Right? We need more grown up leaders. So that's what my coaching is about.
And when you say grown up, what does that mean to you? What do you mean by grow up?
I mean, by grow up, I mean that you take responsibility for what's in your head, right? You question your beliefs and you are actively in control of your mindset of what's going on inside your head. It means you could take control of your emotions, right? You take responsibility for your emotions. If you feel it, it's your responsibility. Figure out like it's caused by some thought that you have. And so starting to unravel those patterns, we all have when we grow up, we feel stuff that we can't handle in the moment. And those feelings don't go away. They get stuck inside of us. And so taking responsibility for that process of releasing all of that old stuff. Like what happens is we get into some situation today and it triggers something that happened, 30 years ago, right? And then we get really emotional about it. So every time that happens, you go back and you're like, okay, what happened? And then you kind of release that, right? And then physically, right? We got to take charge of our bodies, our exercise, our diets, what we do, our sleep, all those things, and be responsible about that. And finally, I'd say like our purpose and our creativity and finding that inner genius and expressing that through everything that we do.
Take us through your journey. So bring us back to 2003, before you grew up, and some of the things that were awry in your life. Or maybe you could even take us to a specific moment where things got really crappy.
Right. Yeah, there was a moment that the thing that kind of started to break things apart for me was I was trying to build a business, and I had this notion that I needed to be like Bill Gates level successful, or I should not exist. Like I should just go kill myself. Like I'm taking up space that other people should be occupying, and I'm breathing the air that they should be breathing. That was kind of like my level of like
talk about an either or. Right. You either have to be Bill Gates or just don't exist.
Exactly, right. And it didn't really occur to me that there's actually probably like billions of people that are not Bill Gates rich, and they're still here. Like, why am I less worthy than them? But that was what was in my head. It was. And so I was just so obsessed with like, just tell me what I got to do to be successful. Just tell me what it is. I'm just whatever. And so I actually started a company in one that became fairly successful and in a short amount of time, not anything ridiculous. It was like a consulting firm. So it wasn't, it was no unicorn, anything like that. But then I gathered this advisory board meeting with some smart folks. And we sat there. And then after we had been strategizing, one of them looked me dead in the eyes and he said, look, we've been here for 3 hours and I still don't know what you want. And it was one of those moments where I was like, what do you mean? I just want to be successful. Tell me how to be successful. And at the same time, it hit something deeper in me where I was like, wait, I'm allowed to want something in business? Like I'm allowed to actually have feeling? And then next thing was like, I don't know what I want. I have no idea. And it made me realize I didn't know how to feel. Like I was just this brain that was carried around on this like annoying vehicle that they call a body, right? And it was just, my brain, super smart. But when you can't feel, you don't know what you want. And that was my life. And it took me sort of 5 years to get to the point where I could. So therapy, coaching, found this incredible body therapy. It's called Body SDS, which I'm working on bringing to the States. It's from Denmark, which is where I was at the time and where I'm from. So it's one of my projects, bring that over here. And then in 2008, I had a moment. That was kind of my that was the big wake up, if you will. The 2003 was that sowing the seed, right? And then in 08, that was I was married. We had our second child. He wouldn't sleep. We bought this house that ended up being way more expensive than we thought because we couldn't get a regular mortgage. We had to borrow from my dad at exorbitant rates. And it was the middle of the winter and it was cold and the boiler ran out of the oil. And I had no idea how that stuff worked because, I'd never had a house before. It was just crappy. And then we were kind of broke from this. And normally I would just go out and find some projects to work on, some contract work. This time I did. And I found like 5 different and they all just fell through the cracks, like all of them at the same time. And it was like, wow.
When you say fell through the cracks, meaning like you didn't get the jobs or you failed to deliver on the jobs? What do you mean?
No, I meant that we actually had signed contracts and then partners in that I was working for threw a fit and had this big argument and that just dissolved. And the other one, they got upset with each other and I sided with the wrong one. And then like that was out of the question. And then, Greenpeace called me. I've done their CMS and their intranet for Greenpeace International, worked for them for 6 years. They called me up right at this time and said, look, we've made budgets for this year and your name ain't in it. We're going to outsource that to India now. So I was like, great.
So it's like a perfect storm of what you would be falling back on for financial stability.
Exactly right.
And it was kind of all pulled out from underneath you.
Exactly. And so I was like, okay, maybe this is the universe trying to tell me that now is the time to find out what I actually want. Because I'd been avoiding that question. And I did. And
so you said you have a young kid at this point, and you've got a mortgage now. So you talk about the universe trying to tell you something here, but what does that feel like? Like what are the emotions that you're experiencing at that moment?
Yeah. It was a desperation, right? It's like, and like, what the hell? Like, what is going on? And then what happened was my wife took the kids off to somewhere else because the house wasn't done. We had people working on the house at the same time. It was like we did some remodeling and it was cold and it was just too much for them. So they went away. So I was alone there and basically with nothing to do because all these contracts had disappeared. And so it was like, well, if I can't do anything else, like what, like, yeah, it was like, what is this? What am I supposed to do? So yeah, desperation. And then I don't know. It's like a door opening in a sense. Yeah. It's a good question. I haven't been back there in a while.
So this door is opening and what do you do at this moment?
So I pulled out some books. I'd been thinking about purpose and like, is there something called a purpose? Like, is there a passion? What is it? What is mine? And I'd been kind of speculating on that for months at this time, but not actually really looked. And so at this moment, I'm like, okay, pulled out various books. I had some stuff that I bought from Tony Robbins years before and another book on purpose and things like that. And I was like, okay, what are some of the questions that they have me ask myself? And it's like, what kind of activities do you love doing? What kind of people do you enjoy being around? What was your dream as a kid to grow up to be? And things of that nature. And sat down and filled it out on my own this evening in February 2008. And then as I did that, it was wild. It was kind of like, I don't even remember finishing it or anything. I just remember this feeling of like kind of like the clouds parting and just this complete vision landed in front of me of, I'm here to integrate entrepreneurship and spirituality. Before, like, I always loved entrepreneurship, but both my parents were entrepreneurs. My mom started a software company and grew it to 50 people in 1980. And my dad had a business. Always loved that side. As a kid, I was very spiritually minded. I felt like I could see behind what was going on with people and that sense of feeling. But then I shut it down because I had some experience that made me feel like I can't trust this. Like when poop hits the fan, this is not reliable. And so I closed that door, rejected it, and very skeptical of anything personal development. I also had this belief that if you needed to talk to someone like a coach or a psychiatrist or something, that meant you had already failed. And so I might as well go kill myself. Like, you had to figure it out on your own or you're a broken person, right? But I'd crossed that line already. I'd like, okay, I give up. I'm broken. Sign me up, right? So during those years before this moment, that, like, I'd open up a little bit to the coaching and to looking at beliefs and then talking to a therapist and then eventually to the spiritual side again. And that feeling that we're all connected, that there's something bigger in life, that we can feel our intuition and we can feel guided and that kind of thing. And so,
purpose.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And so I was like, okay. And then, it really just hit me like, that's it. Entrepreneurship and spirituality, not side by side, but like fully integrated and together. Changed my life. Like, that's been, before that, it was like, oh, this business idea sounds great. This business idea sounds great. And nothing ever got done. And since then, everything has just fit into a whole, a pattern. And that's when things started to take off.
How do you recommend that people start to blend those two areas of their lives? Speaking of the spirituality and the business side.
Right. It's a good question because it was like that kind of landed, and then I was like, okay, what does that mean? That was like a 10-year exploration almost of really figuring out what that means. But to me it's combining the inner and the outer, and the masculine and the feminine. So let me explain that. So the inner and the outer is whenever I'm faced with some sort of business challenge or any life challenge, really, right? There's an inner component and then outer component. The inner component is, who do I need to become in order to not have this problem or have the outcome that I want? Who do I need to become? And I'll literally go and I'll picture myself like in that situation, having that, and try to feel like, how am I feeling in my body? Like, where do I feel a different energy? Where do I notice that? And very often there's that tells me a lot right there. Like, if you feel like something's stuck over there, it kind of feels like unworthiness. It feels like something. So I'll do that. I'll give you an example too. Is like at one point I had a lot of trouble finding good developers to work for me, and I'm a developer, right? So what I realized was that I was really scared that I would find someone who was better than me and that my dad would love them more than he loves me, right? Because that was my way of getting approval and recognition and love from my dad, was to show how good I was at computers.
It was kind of this like core issue that you had been holding on to for all these years.
Right. Yeah. And there, like, every time there's some growth, there's something inside that needs to shift. And then when that shifts, solving the problem and, outside becomes super easy. However, you still have to do the work, right? And so the outer part is creating the systems. I'm very much a systems guy. So it's like, I think I like to combine things like systems and spirituality, right? So it's both. And that's sort of where the masculine feminine also comes in. So the feminine is very good at feeling and vision and just like staying in, I'm not talking about the feminine energy that is in each and every one of us, right? It goes on adventures. It doesn't really go anywhere in particular. And I lived my life there for like 10 years following this moment. I was very much there. And whenever things didn't work out, I would just go deeper into that. Let me just go in the bathtub and like close my eyes and meditate and visualize on this thing. And for some obscure reason, like, it didn't really produce the results in the outer world. Not quite. Like, it wasn't terrible, but it wasn't really getting traction. And that's when I realized some like 2.5 years ago, oh, right, my masculine side is way underdeveloped. I decided as a kid that my dad was bad and scary and I didn't want to be like him. And so I basically shut off my masculine side as a 5-year-old or something like that. And so it wasn't really grown. And so I was like, that needs to be built up. And that became a focus for me. And that's, again, where the growing up comes in, because that then like, okay, now I'm a grown man, but I have this 5-year-old boy inside. How can I be the parent, the father for him today to help him grow up to be a healthy adolescent, a healthy adult that can be with me, right? That changed everything, having these two combined, right? The typical thing is that people have one or the other, and when things aren't quite working, they just go deeper into the one that they're good at. And what we need to be able to play on both sides. If you have too much masculine and not enough feminine, you're going to have tons of results and success and business and all that, but you're not going to feel fulfilled, right? It's not going to have meaning for you. There's not going to be depth to it. There's going to be, a lot of heart in it. If you're very much in your feminine, you have lots of heart and caring and vision and all that stuff, but you're not really making things happen.
Interesting. So you go on kind of this decade-long exploration, and you're learning this and you're applying it in your life. Now it's something that you coach other people to be able to apply in their own lives to get results in their lives like you've had in yours. What's kind of the recommended starting point for, our listeners who are hearing this for the first time, and, some are probably going, I don't get it. And others are probably going, whoa, he's speaking to me, like something is resonating here. For those people who it's resonating with, what's the starting point?
What's the starting point? I think it's setting a higher standard for yourself, right? Setting that vision for yourself that you really can have it all, right? Not letting yourself be stopped by, I guess like work is pretty good, but my relationships suck or whatever it is, right? So just you don't want to come from a place of being dissatisfied, or dissatisfaction can be okay, but I really love this feeling of satiated drive. Like I love everything in my life right now, and I'm super hungry for more, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's that realizing that you can. I think that's the number one thing that really stops people is they stop striving, they stop wanting more. That for me, the desire is divine. Like it's part of our God right to have desire, whether it's sexual or material or feeling or whatever it is. That's what drives us.
I remember hearing. Now I'll see if I can remember it off the top of my head, but somebody listed off like, okay, you've got faith, you've got career, you've got family, you've got hobbies, and I don't remember what the fifth one was, maybe friends or something. They listed off those 5 things, and they're like, choose 3 of the 5 because that's right. You can't excel in all of those areas. And for me, I always hated that. I'm like. Yeah. No, I don't want to have to ignore 2 of those things because they're all really, really important to me. Mm-hmm. But at the same time that I've hated it, I've also kind of observed in myself and in my own life that I do tend to excel at 2 or 3 of those at a time, while, a couple of the other things I feel like get out of balance. And then I have to kind of periodically, reassess and rebalance and decide where I want to put some of my focus. But one thing you said is you can have it all. And that speaks to me because I'm like, I don't want to believe this concept of choose 3 out of the 5 and that's all you get. What are your thoughts on that?
I believe that you can have it all. And very often I find for example, for me, I didn't really invest in my health much until 2 years ago. Way back then in 2008. At that point I'd quit, but for years leading up to that, I was smoking a pack of cigarettes a day, and I was drinking wine and several glasses 3 or 4 nights a week. And I, hated working out. So I pretty much never did that, and just didn't eat very healthy, and 2.5 years ago, that, gradually got better over a little bit of a period, but 2.5 years ago, I really took that seriously, started working out 8 hours a week. And that honestly changed everything. And what I find is that those, investing in my health and my physical body in that way has been tremendously important for my business and for my work. And so the way that I look at it is everything is centered around my life purpose, and everything I do essentially is driving towards that life purpose, right? So everything becomes integrated. So it's not competing against each other. It's supporting each other, right? So, my relationship, my physical body, my creativity, my friends, all of that is in support of that. Like maybe, spending time with my friends, we're not doing anything that is like directly related to like my purpose, but it gives me that free space, free room to revitalize that I need to put the energy into the other things, or however that works out for you.
So you talked about kind of the starting point. For our listeners, what would you recommend in terms of if they're kind of struggling with this? All of us entrepreneurs have these really high highs and really low lows. And for the entrepreneurs who are kind of finding themselves on the downward end of those swings, what would be your recommendation to them?
Learning to master your thoughts and emotions is such a critical life skill. Like the only reason that you have these highs and lows is that you believe the thoughts that are in your head, and you haven't learned how to relate to your feelings. And so let me break that down. So if you're feeling low, right, you can trace it back to a story, a thought in your head that says like, oh, this is terrible. This is never going to work. Or this awful thing happened, or this person is like just being unfair, or whatever it is. So you want to trace back and find out, what is that thought? There's a specific thought that causes you the pain, the suffering that you have in this moment. And once you identify that specific thought, it can take a little bit of detective work to get really specific on what that is. Then you can question it. There's a lady named Byron Katie who's awesome. She has something that's called The Work. You can find it online. It's freely available. It's a series of questions, which is basically, is this true? Do I absolutely know that this is true? How do I feel when I believe that thought? And how would I feel if I just wasn't able to think that thought? And you realize that like you don't know that the thought is really true, and that it makes you feel terrible when you believe it. And if you couldn't think it, you would actually feel great. And then you can turn it around and say, okay, maybe the opposite is true. Maybe some other thing is as true or truer. So that's super powerful, super powerful. And the second piece of just relating to your feelings is realizing that all a feeling is a sensation in your body, right? You call it like anger, and what it really is, if you really tune into it, it's like sort of like a warmth, or like maybe a little bit of a vibration in your kind of shoulder area. And then you're like, oh, all right, that's all it is. And then you really pay attention to the sensations, but you don't need to apply the label. And when you actually pay attention to the sensations, or the fear typically in your belly, or sorrow in your heart, or wherever it is, but once you start to really pay attention to the sensations and ignore the label, and then you breathe, and then it kind of flows through you, and feelings don't have the control over you that they normally do. There's a phrase that I love, which is every struggle is a struggle to avoid feeling a certain feeling. Right? Once you stop fearing your feelings, once you it's just a sensation in the body, it's all it is, then you can allow yourself to feel, and then struggle ends right there. Boom, done.
Calvin, thank you for taking the time to share your story and share some practical advice for our listeners. Where can our listeners stay in touch with you?
Best place is my website, calvincorreli.com. I'm also Calvin Correli on all of the social medias, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and of course, Simplero.com if you are in the market if you're selling information of some sort.
Awesome. Thank you, Calvin. And for our listeners, if you found any of this episode helpful, we would love it if you would like, share, subscribe. And other than that, we'll see you on the next one. Thank you. As entrepreneurs and small businesses, we all kind of reach that point where we know we've created something awesome and we want to share it with the world, right? Mm-hmm. And it's that very next step that can oftentimes be really intimidating or really scary, or you just don't know where to go next, right? And the beautiful thing about this 14-day script challenge is you get your hand held from, okay, you have this cool product, now let's go research and find the exact way to present it and message it to the world in a way that resonates and gets people excited and they're ready to swipe their credit card and purchase. And in the 14-day script challenge, you get the opportunity to go through that step by step with our writers who have done it dozens and dozens of times.
And you actually watch us go through each of the steps ourselves and create it with a real client, a real product, and it's a real campaign that's out there that's been very successful.
That's right. And the feedback that we've had on this thing has just been phenomenal. I mean, we get comment after comment and emails flowing in from people all over the world who have just raved about the impact that this has had on their business.
People tell us over and over again, it is just a huge value punch for the investment for this 14-day script challenge, and really gave them the tool set they needed to walk through it and make it happen.
And we've had dozens of students who have successfully taken the challenge, written their script, launched their ad campaigns, and driven success for their business. It's pretty amazing.
For more information, go to hbros.co/script. That's hbros.co/script.